Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. Bernie Sanders' wife, Jane Sanders, claims the FBI investigation into her potentially fraudulent behavior when she was president of Burlington College is not a real investigation, she says. Mrs. Sanders claims it's sexism. This is what she said. She said, "I find it incredibly sexist that basically he, the man behind the allegations, is going after my husband by destroying my reputation. That is not okay." Also not okay, Mrs. Sanders, claiming you have $2.5 million in donor pledges when really you have nothing, just in order to secure a multi-million-dollar loan from the bank to buy $10 million worth of property. That's called bank fraud. But see, this is the problem with modern progressive feminism. Liberal feminists, like Mrs. Bernie Sanders, they are not fighting for equal rights. No, no. Instead, they want to be placed on a pedestal because of their gender. Mrs. Bernie Sanders doesn't want to be held accountable to the law because she's a woman. Hillary Clinton told young women like me to vote for her because she's a woman. Senator Kamala Harris claimed it wasn't okay for anybody to correct her when she violated Senate rules because she's a woman. Sandra Fluke lobbied Congress to pay for her birth control only because she's a woman. Linda Sarsour argues she's being defamed after she called for jihad against President Trump because she's a woman. The Women's March excluded pro-life women, conservative women, Second Amendment-loving, gun-toting women from their march because they claim we conservative women aren't real women. Let me tell you about real sexism. Real sexism is when 500,000 young women and little girls here in America are subject to female genital mutilation and nobody in the feminist movement stands up for them. Real sexism is the government forcing women to purchase a product like Obamacare even if we don't want to. Real sexism is aborting 160,000 unborn baby girls every year like Planned Parenthood does and then claiming that's women's health care. Real sexism is marching against the Second Amendment when women, like me, use firearms to defend ourselves against sexual abuse 200,000 times a year. Mrs. Sanders, real sexism is the women who can't vote, they can't drive, they can't leave their houses without permission from their husband. They're stoned to death if they're raped. They're forced to undergo virginity tests before their fathers marry them off against their will. They're burned to death if they refuse to be sex slaves. They're taxed if they're Christian, or brutally murdered if they don't submit to Mohammed. That, Mrs. Sanders, that is real sexism. The FBI is investigating you because you quite possibly lied. You quite possibly committed bank fraud. And there are even allegations and testimony that your husband, Senator Bernie Sanders, the self-proclaimed enemy of the big banks, pressured the bank to secure your loan. You're not being investigated because you're a woman, Mrs. Sanders. You're being investigated because there's ample evidence you violated the law. And that's my final point tonight. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you liked the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, have a good night.